49ers fans, there are two stories today, and honestly, neither one is something I want to ignore. The first one has us watching the quarterback room a whole lot more closely than we expected, and the second one could create another problem in a position where this team absolutely cannot afford to lose much depth. And the timing of both stories, yeah, that's what makes this interesting. You know how quickly things can change in the preseason. One injury, one unexpected development, and suddenly a position that looked fine a few days ago starts feeling like a real concern. And right now, that's exactly where the Niners are. So stay with me, because we're going to break down both situations, what they could mean for this team, and whether San Francisco may have to make some moves sooner than expected. If you're a real 49ers fan, do me a favor and hit that like button. I'm Walter, and this is 49ers Nation Report. We're still a new channel, so if you believe this team can get back to the Super Bowl next season, subscribe and be part of this Niners community from the very beginning. Let's build this thing together. Let's get into the first story, because this one starts with a situation that had a lot of 49ers fans holding their breath. Curtis Rourke had actually put together a pretty solid performance in Thursday's preseason game. He completed 12 of 14 passes for 101 yards, and it looked like he was doing exactly what he needed to do to strengthen his case for that number 3 quarterback spot. But then everything changed. Rourke suffered a rib injury and had to leave the game. What made the situation especially scary was that he was having difficulty breathing, and he was taken to the hospital for evaluation. Thankfully, he was discharged later that Thursday night, and the hope right now is that this is not a long-term injury. And believe me, that's the part every 49ers fan wants to hear. Because nobody wants to see a young quarterback who is making a strong impression get knocked out of the preseason with a serious injury. But even if Rourke is going to be okay, the Niners have to think about the immediate situation. They probably don't want Brock Purdy or Mac Jones playing a huge number of preseason snaps just to make up for the loss of depth. Adrian Martinez had to finish Thursday's game, but realistically, San Francisco probably doesn't want him carrying the entire workload for the rest of August. And that's why the idea of bringing in another quarterback makes a lot of sense. Rourke is still considered the favorite for the number 3 spot on the depth chart. And depending on how he develops, there's even a possibility that San Francisco could eventually feel comfortable with Rourke as Brock Purdy's backup if Mac Jones were to leave the team next offseason. But that's a future conversation. The Niners need bodies. They need someone who can take snaps, protect Purdy and Jones from unnecessary preseason exposure, and give the coaching staff another option while they figure out exactly how serious Rourke's injury is. And there are 3 quarterbacks who stand out. The first one is Jack Plummer. And this one actually makes a lot of sense because the 49ers already know who he is. A few weeks ago, San Francisco brought Plummer in for a workout, and the purpose was to have him throw to some tight ends. So this isn't some completely random name suddenly appearing out of nowhere. Plummer was also the UFL MVP earlier this season. Now, obviously, being a UFL MVP doesn't automatically mean you're ready to step into an NFL offense and dominate. We have to be realistic about that. But if the 49ers are simply looking for a healthy quarterback who can come in, learn enough of the system, throw in practice, and potentially play in a preseason game, Plummer is a pretty obvious candidate. And honestly, what would San Francisco really be risking? The worst-case scenario is that Plummer comes in and doesn't show enough to stick around. But when you're talking about a reigning MVP at any professional level, that's at least something worth looking at. Then there's a name that is going to hit a little differently for longtime 49ers fans, CJ Beathard. Yeah, how about a reunion? The 49ers drafted Beathard in the 3rd round back in 2017, and he remained with San Francisco through 2020. He obviously knows the organization, and he still has relationships with some of his former teammates. So if the Niners picked up the phone, this wouldn't exactly be a completely unfamiliar environment for him. The big question is football readiness. Beathard hasn't thrown a pass in an NFL regular season game since 2023. His most recent NFL stop was with the Detroit Lions practice squad in 2025, and right now he's without a team. So we're not talking about a quarterback who is going to come in and suddenly challenge Brock Purdy for the starting job. That's not what this would be about. This would be about depth. It's about having a veteran who has NFL experience, understands what it's like to play in this league, and already has some history with the 49ers organization and some of the people inside that locker room. And then we have Tanner Mordecai. Now, this is definitely the deeper cut. Some 49ers fans probably remember watching Tanner Mordecai and Carter Bradley take preseason snaps last year, and if you do remember those games, well, let's just say you probably earned your Niners fan badge that day. But jokes aside, Mordecai actually performed reasonably well. He completed 13 of 19 passes last year, and that makes him another quarterback who could potentially step in and give San Francisco some additional depth. So you've got Jack Plummer, a player the 49ers have already worked out recently and who was the UFL MVP. You've got CJ Beathard, a former 49ers draft pick with NFL experience and existing relationships inside the organization. And you've got Tanner Mordecai, a quarterback who already has some familiarity with the team after getting preseason experience last year. Personally, I think the biggest thing here is that nobody should overreact to the injury before we know more about Curtis Rourke. The hope is that Rourke is fine and can return for the rest of the preseason, but the 49ers also can't just assume everything will work out perfectly. This is the preseason. This is exactly when you're supposed to protect your roster and make sure you have enough depth to get through these situations. And if Rourke isn't able to return soon, don't be surprised if one of those three names becomes a lot more relevant. And honestly, if CJ Beathard ends up walking back into the 49ers building, that would be a pretty fun reunion for some of the longtime fans. But that's not the only position where San Francisco may have a depth problem. Because now we have to talk about the running back room, and this one honestly is not ideal. The 49ers have had a hard time keeping that room healthy, and we're starting to see some similarities to what happened last season. Right now, Christian McCaffrey is being held out because of a minor tightness issue. The team is being cautious with him, and there's an expectation that McCaffrey will be healthy for Week 1. So, on the surface, that's not necessarily something to panic about, but the problem is what happens behind him. The battle for the backup running back job currently involves Jordan James and Kalen Black. James is dealing with a rib injury that could keep him out for a few more weeks. Black, meanwhile, has an adductor injury and currently doesn't have a timetable for his return. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Jordan James didn't have any carries in the preseason last year. Kalen Black is a rookie. And right now, both players are trending toward potentially having no carries in the first 2 games of this preseason. So how comfortable can the 49ers really be with either one of them taking meaningful touches in Week 1? That's the question. And then there's Isaac Guerendo. Guerendo is currently on the physically unable to perform list, and there's no indication that he's going to be back anytime soon. That's especially important because even when Guerendo was healthy last year, San Francisco ultimately decided to trade for Brian Robinson because the organization didn't trust Guerendo enough to rely on him in that role. And that tells you something. The 49ers don't just need a body at running back. They need someone they can actually trust. Because Christian McCaffrey cannot be asked to carry an unsustainable workload all season long. Last year, Brian Robinson had 92 carries, while McCaffrey had an enormous number of touches. That's not something San Francisco can simply keep doing year after year and expect everything to be fine. At some point, somebody else has to take the workload. The 49ers drafted Jordan James and Kalen Black with the idea that those guys could potentially become those players. But right now, neither one has the experience or health situation that gives you complete confidence, and that's why a veteran running back could become necessary. There are several experienced names currently available. Khalil Herbert is available. Zamir White is available. Patrick Taylor is available. And Sincere McCormick is available. Now here's the interesting part. Those 4 players combined for only 28 carries last season. So we're not talking about 4 guys who were major contributors last year, but at least they have NFL experience, and one of them could potentially provide San Francisco with a safety net while the younger players recover and develop. And the preseason opener gave us another piece of information. Sincere McCormick was the best of that group, finishing with 38 yards on 10 carries. Khalil Herbert had 18 yards on 6 carries, Zamir White had 1 yard on 2 carries, and Patrick Taylor finished with -5 yards on 5 carries. So right now, it looks like one of those 4 could have a legitimate opportunity to make the team and compete for touches in Week 1. And honestly, if that's not a sign that the 49ers need to at least consider signing another running back, I don't know what is. The bigger issue isn't just getting through the preseason, it's protecting Christian McCaffrey. The whole point of having a competent number 2 running back is that you can take some pressure off McCaffrey, keep him fresh throughout the season, and hopefully have him at his best when the games matter most. And we all know how important McCaffrey is to this offense. When he's healthy and playing at his best, he changes everything. He affects the running game. He affects the passing game. He creates matchup problems. He gives Kyle Shanahan another weapon to build the entire offense around. But that's exactly why the 49ers can't afford to run him into the ground. The team needs another option, and the names available are pretty interesting. Najee Harris is available. Antonio Gibson is available. Nick Chubb is available. Raheem Mostert is available. Kareem Hunt is available. Miles Sanders is available. Alex Madison is available. And Cam Akers is available. Now, I'm not saying San Francisco needs to sign one specific player from that group immediately. But when you look at the situation objectively, it's hard not to understand why the veteran market is becoming more attractive. The 49ers are dealing with Christian McCaffrey's minor tightness issue. Jordan James has a rib injury. Kalen Black has an adductor injury with no timetable. Isaac Guerendo is on the PUP list. And the younger players simply don't have enough proven NFL experience for the team to feel completely comfortable handing them the backup role. That's a lot of uncertainty for one position. And remember, we're talking about a team that has Super Bowl expectations. This isn't a rebuilding roster where you can just shrug and say, well, let's see what happens. There is pressure here. The 49ers believe their championship window is still open, and every decision matters. That's why these two stories are connected in a bigger way. The quarterback situation shows how quickly one injury can force a team to reconsider its depth. The running back situation shows what happens when injuries begin piling up at the same position, and both situations raise the same question. How much insurance does San Francisco need before the regular season begins? With Curtis Rourke, I don't think this should become a panic situation as long as his injury isn't serious. But I absolutely understand why the 49ers would consider bringing in Jack Plummer, CJ Beathard, or Tanner Mordecai just to make sure the quarterback room isn't stretched too thin. And at running back, I think the argument for adding a veteran is even stronger. Christian McCaffrey is expected to be ready for Week 1, but the goal shouldn't simply be getting him ready. The goal should be keeping him healthy. And if San Francisco doesn't trust the young players behind him, they need a backup plan. Because the worst possible outcome is waiting until the season begins, watching the injury situation get worse, and then realizing you should have made the move weeks earlier. That's the kind of thing that drives fans crazy. We don't need the 49ers to make moves just for the sake of making moves. We need smart moves. If Curtis Rourke is healthy, great. If not, bring in somebody who can handle the preseason workload. If Jordan James and Kalen Black recover quickly and prove they're ready, fantastic. But if they're not ready, go get an experienced running back. Because the San Francisco 49ers don't have the luxury of pretending depth doesn't matter. This is a team trying to get back to the Super Bowl, and when you're trying to do that, you don't just build around your stars, you protect them. That's the biggest thing I'm taking away from both of these stories. The 49ers still have plenty of talent. They still have Brock Purdy. They still have Christian McCaffrey. They still have an offense that can be dangerous when the pieces are healthy. But August is showing us that the depth chart can change very quickly. And as fans, that's why we're watching every preseason game so closely. Because sometimes the biggest story isn't the final score. It's who gets hurt, who steps up, who earns trust, and who forces the front office to make a decision it didn't expect to make. So, for Curtis Rourke, let's hope this is nothing more than a scary moment, and that he gets back on the field soon. For the running back room, I think the 49ers need to be honest with themselves. If they don't feel comfortable with the current options behind Christian McCaffrey, there is absolutely nothing wrong with bringing in a veteran. I'd rather see San Francisco make that move now than wait until the situation becomes an emergency. Because when you're chasing a Super Bowl, you don't want to be scrambling for answers after the season has already started. You want those answers before the pressure gets real. And that's where we are right now. The 49ers have the talent. They have the expectations. They have the pressure. Now they need the depth to survive the road ahead. And as a Niners fan, that's what I'm watching more than anything. Not just who's starting, not just who's scoring touchdowns. I'm watching to see whether this roster is built to survive the injuries, the long season, and the pressure that comes with believing this team can finally get back to the Super Bowl. Because I still believe they can. But believing in this team also means being honest about where the problems are. And right now, quarterback depth and running back depth are two situations I will be watching very, very closely. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button and let me know what you think down in the comments. Would you bring back CJ Beathard? Would you give Jack Plummer a chance? Or do you think Tanner Mordecai deserves another look? And at running back, who would you want the 49ers to sign if they decide they need a veteran? Najee Harris, Antonio Gibson, Nick Chubb, Raheem Mostert, Kareem Hunt, Miles Sanders, Alex Madison, Cam Akers? Or would you stick with the current group and trust Jordan James, Kalen Black, and the rest of the room? I want to hear what Niners fans think. And if you're new here, this is 49ers Nation Report. We're still building this community from the ground up, and if you're one of those fans who genuinely believes the 49ers can get back to the Super Bowl next season, subscribe and be here from the beginning. Because we're going to ride through all of it together. The injuries, the roster moves, the big wins, the frustrating losses, the rumors, the debates, all of it. We're 49ers fans. We don't just watch this team, we live it. And hopefully when this season is over, we're looking back at these preseason worries and laughing about them while talking about a Super Bowl run. But until then, keep your eyes on this team, because August is already giving us plenty to talk about. Let's go, Niners.